And we're back. Sorry I missed you for the first segment. I apologize. I was on the phone speaking with a client about a case. It was about the RIB. And she was chewing my ear, and the woman I spoke with was asking me if I'd be interested in filing an injunction if the thing went through, and I was discussing that with her, and I looked at the clock, and I went, "Oh God!" I said, "I gotta go." And she goes, "Wait, I gotta go." Like, so I apologize.
No problem. We missed you.
Okay, so we were talking about you had a life-changing experience when you were about 40 years old.
Me?
Yeah.
No, I was 40.
When you were 40?
Yeah. And I won't go into a whole lot of my personal thing other than to say one of the amazing experiences I had was a thing called an out-of-body experience. And that happened while I was driving to the hospital. I didn't think I was going to make it. I was having a heart attack. And next thing I know, I'm looking at myself driving. And I'm leaning up against the window and just, kind of clutching my chest. But I'm watching myself. And I don't feel any pain at that point. And next thing I know, I pull into the emergency parking lot here at Desert View. And I jump back in my body. And there's no pain, there's nothing other than I'm covered with sweat. Otherwise, I probably would have went home thinking I was, freaking out on something. I'd had too much coffee. But I went in, got it checked out. Sure enough, it had been a heart attack. And I didn't experience any of the other, what they call near-death experience things of going up a tunnel, seeing a light, talking to Jesus, seeing dead, relatives or whatever. But it absolutely happened. I told people at the hospital. I told all my friends immediately. And it led me to a long road to investigate near-death experiences. And son of a gun, hundreds and thousands of people have this same experience. They just don't want to talk about it.
Well, yeah, because people will think you're crazy or weird, or a lot of people are just embarrassed because they're not really at that point ready to share that something that personal. Years ago, back when I was living in Tennessee, my ex-wife bought me this book called The Remote Viewers, and it's a psychic spy program during the Cold War, and so I read it, and as I was reading, I was like, hey, I did, when I was a kid, weird things like, seeing dead relatives, and so, a lot of things that happened to some of the psychics there, I could relate to, and so I really enjoyed the book, and so it was written by this guy, but I didn't know how to get a hold of him. I wanted to find out if the stuff was true or not. But one of the central characters was a guy named Hal Puthoff, who was he headed up, or he started the Menlo Park project for the CIA doing the remote viewing, and so I looked him up, and he was working in Austin, Texas, for the studies for advanced sciences or advanced learning, something to that effect. And so I saw him on Google, and I Googled him, and or if it's Google, then it probably was Yahoo in those days. But I looked him up, and I called the number just to get his email address. And the guy answers, he goes, "Puthoff." I'm like, whoa. And so I go, "Is this Hal Puthoff?" Yes. And so I explained who I was and what I was doing and my interest. And he and I chatted for over an hour, and he gave me the number of a guy that would mentor me by the name of Dale Graff. And Dale was full bird colonel of the Air Force, and he headed up the sister project. Menlo Park was CIA, and the Department of Defense did the sister program from the Fort Meade, Maryland, and so he gave me Dale's cell phone number. I called Dale. Dale was really cool. Just like we were all good buddies, and so he would mentor me on how to do this remote viewing, and that changed my life because I could do stuff that a lot of people would think was like silly. And I'm not going to say the things that I've learned that I can do, but I can.
Yeah. I was brought up with that. My father was involved with all kinds of studies with the mind and the mind control and abilities that you have. So I was telling Chuck earlier that I knew about hypnosis when I was 6. I could do self-hypnosis when I was 8.
Okay.
I knew people that were involved in remote viewing with these studies they were doing. I just grew up with it. I thought everybody knew this stuff. But my father always said, be careful who you say this to, because not everybody knows.
Well, in the book, they refer to the giggle factor.
Yeah.
That when you, even at the highest levels, where these, I mean, the CIA and the Department of Defense, they believed, I mean, they had remarkable results.
Right.
They found the Russians lost a reconnaissance plane in Africa someplace, and it was gone off the face of the earth. They couldn't find debris, nothing. So one of the remote viewers that was working for the American government found it. It had crashed into a river, and it was underwater. That's why they couldn't find it. But she found it. They went there and we stole all their stuff.
By the way, remote viewing is a mental thing. It's basically people that have been trained or have learned or have an ability to see things that are, across the world.
Right.
And in detail.
In
Right.
energy state. My father said always that everyone has this ability, that it is society that quenches this knowledge
Right.
and makes you kind of inhibit your own ability, so people, lose it.
But it's like any other talent. I mean, just a guy that's 5'4" with thick legs is never going to be a good basketball player.
Right.
But he might be better at other things. But so I've encountered people at different degrees of abilities with psychic abilities, and some are like just naturally talented. And most people, although they appreciate their skills, grow to kind of hate the project, because what happens is it negatively affects your life in so many ways because of the people who consider you weird or out of the norm, and it's hard to relate to people unless you can share those experiences. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that gravitate toward those things that are like sensationalism they may have those talents too, but they're flat out strange too.
Well, we were kind of groomed growing up with it. Then we were groomed like any child would be groomed in their environment, not to speak to just anybody about this, and to listen to other people. And then if you found someone that had something in common with you and had other abilities, then you could privately discuss things with them. But it wasn't a conversation that I would have with my friends that I would be in sports with, or I would ride my bike with. It would be something that I learned growing up, that you had to be very picky on discussion.
But I encourage anybody who's interested in this area, you read as much as you can. There's a lot online.
Yes.
Unfortunately, a lot of the people that try to sell books and programs, and a lot of them are hucksters. And in particular, there's several people that were in the remote viewing program that were from the Fort Meade group. I'm not going to mention their names. I know who they are, but they were one of them. All his job was to make sure everybody was fed properly and was comfortable. He was a captain, and he made it to the rank of major, which is it's a respectable rank. But when you're looking at when you go by major and you're out of the military, it tells me that you got worked out of the program, because if you can't make it to light colonel, then there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
One of the things I think that is so sad is that we've been conditioned to worry so much about what other people think when we tell the truth.
Right.
Whether it be weird in people's idea, what's been created is a norm. And it's not us that create it. It's the media, it's the so-called leaders, the controllers,
Right.
the Illuminati, whatever you want to call
The
it.
establishment.
Yeah, they create the norm, and then they train us, just like dogs, to defend the norm. And if you go outside the norm, it's not them that usually attacks you unless you really start getting a following.
Right.
It's the people inside this normal cage we're in, where we're afraid to tell the truth. We're afraid to explore beyond this box we're in. And if we ever did that, the establishment, the controllers, they've got serious problems. And to me, this Trump thing, the elections, ribs, no matter what the subject is, that is what we've got to adhere to. is that we aren't limited to the norm. We're not in a box. We're only there if we allow ourselves to stay there.
If you believe in the tenets of what is it? We were talking about earlier. You were talking about before I got here. Quantum mechanics, and quantum physics, and then if that's true, and the human mind projects basically reality, then humans, every individual can make their own reality.
Absolutely.
It's just, but we don't. We cower down and we do what other realities confine us to.
Both
That parallel reality that we hear so much about,
Yeah, and we do it individually and collectively. Collectively, just our attitudes, our thoughts, our wishes, if we ever were allowed to express them to ourselves mostly, and then to others, the world absolutely would change. And again, this is going back to proven experiments in physics, in quantum physics, in everything. We do affect what happens in our lives.
You know, business, especially these, what they call multi-level companies, they tell you, put a picture on your refrigerator and just imagine, focus, put a picture what you're going to be like in 3 years or 5 years, so that this becomes a physical manifestation, is actually what it's about, but people don't understand that. They're not taught to relate to it.
Well, it works just the opposite, too, because whether you know it or not, you're doing it, you're working it, and so someone that worriers, you know, there's a lot of, you know, expressions about worriers, but you know, no man ever extended his life one day by worrying. And so that said, is when you worry, you're bringing all those negative things upon you, and just the opposite, when, you know, people that are really upbeat and have a lot of charisma. That's self-generating, and and people, oh well, gosh, how come he has all the luck? Because he thinks lucky.
And me and Ammie were talking, we both experienced some horrendous medical things. We've both been written off as, you know, dead or dying.
Several times.
And here we are. In my case, I've been mad at everything so much. I was not ready to go. I wanted to fight them, you know. I hadn't achieved what I think I should have achieved in this life. And I ain't going until then, you know, simple as that.
Well, to me, it was just a matter of I wasn't in control. I knew that I wasn't in control. Either I was going to live or I was going to die, you know, and dying isn't all it's cracked up to be. It just isn't a continuation of what you are without this body. And so I wasn't afraid of it. I was just, you know, either way, I'll do what I have to do. You know, if I want to lug this body around a little bit longer, then I will. But I've been in that situation 3 or 4 times in my life.
Okay, we're getting close to a break. Coming back, and we'll have more for you after the break.